Biography: The Life, Path of Cultivation, and Dharma Practice of Mahakasyapa, the one who left everything to find everything, then abandoned everything to attain everything. There exists a wondrous paradox. One born amid gold and jewels chose patched robes and alms rice. One who could dwell in palaces chose mountain caves and forest groves. One granted every luxury chose the harshest austerities. And from this paradoxical path, this great being left humanity an invaluable heritage, the Tripiṭaka, that we still receive today. Please subscribe to our channel to journey together through profound stories about life philosophy from the Buddha's teachings and the wisdom of sages, where each lesson becomes a torch illuminating our souls toward peace. Beneath the Pipphali tree. The day a great being descended, more than 2,500 years ago, when the sun had just risen over the horizon of Magadha, in the village of Mahatitha, also called Nalanda, a cry rang out, announcing the birth of a future saint. This was no ordinary place, but the mansion of the great Brahmin householder, Kapila, whose wealth rivaled King Bimbisara himself. Lady Sumanadavi was strolling in the garden when she felt weary and stopped to rest beneath the great Pipphali tree. And there, amid the fragrance of flowers and leaves, amid the singing of birds, a child was born with extraordinary auspicious signs. At birth, the infant did not cry loudly like ordinary babies, but made only soft, gentle sounds. A radiant glow seemed to emanate from the tiny body, the skin gleaming golden like rays of light. Even more miraculously, celestial cloths descended from the void to cover mother and child. Householder Kapila and Lady Sumanadevi were overjoyed, naming their son Pipphali, meaning constant purity, signifying birth beneath the Pipphali tree and his serene nature from the womb. Pipphali grew up under his parents' devoted care and hundreds of servants. The boy studied all the knowledge of the Brahmin lineage, the 4 Vedas, astronomy and geography, poetry and literature, mathematics and painting, ritual practices, and mystical arts. Particularly, he possessed an extraordinary memory, retaining everything he learned, understanding even the languages of birds and beasts, reading natural omens. However, what most worried his parents was his disinterest in the 5 desires, his indifference to worldly pleasures, and his constant contemplation of ultimate truth. When Pipphali came of age, householder Kapila and Lady Sumanadavi began worrying about marriage. They wanted him to wed, continue the lineage, inherit the estate, but Pipphali firmly refused, believing marriage and children would obstruct the spiritual path he sought. The more his parents pressed, the more he resisted. Finally, in desperation, he devised a plan. He commissioned a skilled craftsman to cast a statue of a beautiful woman in pure gold, then presented it to his parents. "If you find a girl exactly like this statue, I will marry her. Otherwise, please do not force me." Destined encounter. A meeting written in fate. Pipphali's parents believed finding a girl matching the golden statue was impossible, but destiny had arranged otherwise. One day, a wandering Brahmin from distant lands happened to see the golden statue and exclaimed in surprise, "I know a maiden with exactly such features. She is the daughter of householder Kapilavastu, named Badar Kapilani, from a family equally wealthy as yours. But remarkably, she too refuses marriage, desiring only to renounce the world." This Brahmin was entrusted by both families with matchmaking duties. He wandered through many lands, finally reaching Badar's father's mansion. When he described the young man from Magadha, the lady brought the golden statue for her daughter to see. Badar looked at the statue, her heart suddenly stirring, yet she remained resolute. "I do not wish to marry." However, pressure from both sets of parents proved too great, and they eventually had to acquiesce. The wedding was celebrated lavishly with hundreds of distinguished guests. But on their wedding night, something extraordinary occurred. The couple did not interact like typical newlyweds. Pipphali and Badar sat facing each other, discussing aspirations for liberation. Both shared the same yearning, non-attachment to worldly life, seeking only absolute truth. They vowed to live in Brahmacharya, maintaining purity, awaiting the opportunity to renounce together. For over 10 years, they lived like spiritual companions, without words of affection, without gestures of intimacy. By day they fulfilled duties to parents and household. By night they sat in meditation, discussing Dharma. Life amid gold and jewels meant nothing to them. Palatial mansions could not compare to mountain caves in their minds. The servants could not understand why this young couple remained so distant, but none dared ask. Time passed thus, until one day, both sets of parents passed away, worldly ties severed. The opportunity for liberation arrived, parting for the Dharma. 9:10. The spiritual journey begins. After completing their parents' funeral rites, Pipphali and Buddha sat together one final time. Both knew the moment of separation had come. They divided the entire vast estate among the poor, freed all livestock, released servants to freedom, then both donned simple robes, removed all gold and jeweled ornaments, and went in different directions. Pipphali promised Buddha, "I will seek a true master, and when found, I will return to guide you." Buddha nodded. They parted without a tear, for they knew this was the right step on the path to liberation. Pipphali wandered throughout Magadha, seeking many renowned spiritual teachers. He studied with ascetics in deep forests, with learned Brahmins, with solitary practitioners, but none satisfied him. Their teachings contained partial truth but lacked complete fulfillment. The practices they transmitted showed results, but did not reach ultimate realization. 3 years passed. Pipphali still had not found a suitable teacher. He nearly despaired, wondering whether ultimate truth truly existed. Precisely at that moment, news of an extraordinary Shramana began spreading throughout Magadha. People spoke of a spiritual teacher who had achieved supreme perfect enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree. He was teaching the sublime Dharma in many places, having liberated countless beings. Hearing this news, Pipphali's yearning to meet this Shramana arose. The day he left home seeking the path was the very day the Buddha Shakyamuni attained enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree. After 3 years of searching, the karmic connection between teacher and disciple had finally ripened. One day, Pipphali was on the road to Bamboo Grove Monastery, where the Buddha taught, when suddenly he saw a Shramana sitting beneath an ancient tree by the roadside. The figure sat calmly, body dignified, radiance emanating from his entire form. With just one glance, Pipphali sensed extraordinary spiritual power. Everything he had sought for 3 years seemed to appear before his eyes. Without hesitation, he immediately approached, knelt in prostration, and addressed the Buddha. "Blessed One, please accept me as your disciple. I take refuge in the Triple Gem and request to renounce the world under the Buddha." The Buddha looked at the young man before him, smiled and said, "Excellent. Come, bhikkhu." With just those words, Pipphali's hair and beard fell away. His clothing transformed into Dharma robes. He had officially become a disciple of the Buddha. Swift enlightenment. Aha. From ordinary being to arhat. After renouncing, Pipphali received from the Buddha the Dharma name Mahakasyapa, meaning Great Kashyapa. From this moment, he was no longer the wealthy family's son Pipphali, but Bhikkhu Kashyapa, a practitioner of liberation. Venerable Kasyapa practiced diligently day and night following the Buddha's teachings. He practiced all 13 Dutta practices, wearing only cast-off robes, keeping only 3 robes, eating 1 meal per day, taking alms in order, sitting beneath trees, dwelling in solitude, staying in cemeteries, living in the open, not lying down, only sitting in meditation, sleeping wherever a seat could be laid, eating whatever food was offered. These austere practices that ordinary people could hardly endure, Venerable Kasyapa practiced with joy. After just 7 days of unceasing diligent practice, Venerable Kasyapa experienced great transformations in consciousness. On the 8th day, while he sat in meditation beneath a tree, suddenly his mind became completely pure, all afflictions severed. He attained arhatship. This swift enlightenment astonished everyone. Someone born wealthy, accustomed to comfortable living, could renounce and practice to such heights in such brief time, truly rare. The Buddha was most pleased, praising Venerable Kasyapa as foremost in dutta practices among disciples. Once the Buddha saw that elderly Venerable Kasyapa continued practicing severe dutta austerities, and compassionately advised, "You are old now. You need not continue wearing coarse, heavy robes. Wear the light robes offered by faithful donors. Do not continue such excessive austerities." But Venerable Kasyapa respectfully replied, "Blessed One, I have vowed to maintain dutta practices throughout life. These practices help future generations cultivate liberation. I request to continue maintaining them as an example for posterity." The Buddha was deeply moved, consented and taught, "Excellent. If dutta practices remain in the world, the true Dharma will abide long. The celestial realms will increase. The 3 evil paths will diminish. You have created great means for the Dharma's continued presence." Not only did the Buddha praise him, other great disciples also respected Venerable Kasyapa. Once Venerable Shariputra came to the stone cave where Venerable Kasyapa practiced, posing a question about profound philosophy that heretics often used to challenge. Venerable Kasyapa answered thoroughly, causing Venerable Shariputra to rejoice in praise. This incident showed that Venerable Kasyapa's wisdom and realization had reached the highest level. If you sense the profundity in this cultivation journey of the Great Elder, please subscribe to our channel to not miss the valuable lessons ahead. The Flower Sermon, transmission of the mystic seal. During the Buddha's teaching years, a particularly significant event occurred at Vulture Peak. One day, the Buddha assembled the Great Assembly to expound Dharma. The celestials offered a golden lotus flower. The Buddha received the flower, held it up for the assembly to see, then remained silent without speaking. Thousands in the assembly were perplexed, not understanding what the Buddha meant. Everyone waited in silence. The atmosphere became so solemn one could hear the wind through tree leaves. Suddenly, amid that silent assembly, Venerable Kasyapa smiled. That smile was serene, at ease, as if understanding everything thoroughly. The Buddha looked directly at Venerable Kasyapa and said, "I possess the true Dharma eye treasury, the wondrous mind of nirvana, the formless form of reality, the subtle Dharma gate, independent of words and letters, a special transmission outside the teachings. Now I entrust this to you, Mahakasyapa. Guard this true Dharma well to transmit to future generations. Do not let it be severed." This is the famous Flower Sermon event in Buddhist history, marking the mind seal transmission from Buddha to Venerable Kasyapa, initiating the Chanzen transmission lineage. Some wonder, why did only Venerable Kasyapa understand the Buddha's intention? Actually, in that assembly, many arhats understood the Buddha's mind, but only Venerable Kasyapa possessed the karmic conditions, character and responsibility to receive the duty of preserving and transmitting the true Dharma. The Buddha not only transmitted the Dharma to him, but also entrusted the responsibility of compiling the canon in the future. Though this event was recorded later in Buddhist texts, its Chan significance is profound and has been treasured by generations of practitioners. Besides the Flower Sermon, another memorable incident occurred. Once the Buddha invited Venerable Kasyapa to share his seat, dividing his place in half for him. This had never happened with any other disciple. The Buddha even removed his golden robe and gave it to Venerable Kasyapa. This demonstrated the Buddha's absolute trust in him, believing he would be the one to shoulder the mission of spreading the true Dharma after the Buddha's Parinirvāṇa. Venerable Kasyapa did not betray the Buddha's trust. He continued practicing diligently, never slackening in the slightest. He remained the exemplar of dutta practice for everyone. When taking alms, He went only to the poorest homes. Many wondered why he did not go to wealthy homes to receive better food offerings. He explained, "The wealthy already have abundant merit. They do not need me to create more merit for them. The poor lack merit, which is why they are poor. I go to their homes for alms to create opportunities for them to plant merit fields, helping them gain merit in the future, guiding Bahada, fulfilling the ancient promise." After 1 year of monastic life under the Buddha, Venerable Kasyapa remembered his promise to Buddha Kapilani. At that time, the Buddha had just permitted establishment of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, thanks to entreaties from Mahaprajapati Gautami, his stepmother. This was the opportunity to fulfill his commitment to his former wife. He entered meditative absorption to observe, seeing Buddha practicing with a heterodox sect by the Ganges River. After he left home seeking the path, Buddha waited for news, but as months passed without word, she finally renounced under heterodox teachers. Venerable Kasyapa asked a bhikkhuni to go to the Ganges to find Buddha. Upon meeting, he expounded the Buddha's true Dharma to her, the authentic path to liberation. Hearing this, Buddha's mind opened in understanding, immediately requesting refuge in the Buddha and joining the Bhikkhuni Sangha. She practiced as diligently as Venerable Kasyapa and soon also attained arhatship. Among the bhikkhunis, she was honored as foremost in recollecting past lives, able to observe her own and others' previous existences. 2 people once married in worldly life had now both achieved sagehood, practicing Dharma together to liberate beings. They were no longer bound by ordinary affection, but were pure Dharma companions on the liberation path. Their story became an example of renouncing sensual attachment, of determination seeking truth, of spiritual friendship, transcending all worldly bonds. The Buddha often used their story to teach disciples about true love, not binding each other in samsara, but advancing together on the path to liberation. Another story demonstrates Venerable Kasyapa's compassion. Once, while taking alms in Rajagriha, he encountered an extremely poor old woman. She had no home, no relatives, surviving on what others discarded. At that moment she lay ill on an earthen mound, awaiting death. She had just found some leftover rice water in the garbage, using a broken tile to scoop it up to drink. Seeing this, Venerable Kasyapa knew this was her opportunity to plant merit, so he approached her and extended his alms bowl. The old woman felt deeply ashamed, thinking herself too poor to offer to a shramana. But Venerable Kasyapa patiently encouraged, "Please make offering to me, even just a little. Value lies not in material, but in mind." The old woman was moved, poured all the rice water from her broken tile into his bowl. He received it, recited verses of blessing for her. Just days later, the old woman passed away and was reborn in Triastrisha heaven, protecting the true Dharma, an exemplar of discipline. Throughout the Buddha's lifetime, Venerable Kasyapa was not only an exemplar of practice but also a strict guardian of discipline. He showed no favoritism, even toward other great disciples, if they acted improperly. Once he admonished Venerable Ananda for leading many new bhikkhus who did not yet guard their sense faculties to a lay supporter's home for offerings. Venerable Kasyapa said, "Venerable Ananda, why do you travel with these new bhikkhus who do not guard their faculties, are not moderate in eating, do not maintain mindful awareness? I think you act like one trampling grain." Venerable Kasyapa's admonishments, though seemingly harsh, arose from loving concern for the true Dharma. He worried that without strict discipline maintenance, gradually the Sangha would degenerate, the true Dharma would decline. He did not wish to see what the Buddha had painstakingly built, destroyed by later generations' laxity. Therefore, though knowing he might be misunderstood as severe, he persisted in reminding and admonishing what was wrong. The Buddha greatly valued this attitude of Venerable Kasyapa. Once he taught, "Without Kasyapa, I worry for the true Dharma's future." Venerable Kasyapa is like the Sangha's pillar, the guardian of discipline, the example for all to follow. As long as there are people like Kasyapa, the true Dharma will abide long. These words of praise were not only for Venerable Kasyapa personally, but also a reminder to the entire Sangha. Guard the discipline, practice the true Dharma correctly. That is how the Buddha's teaching endures. However, Venerable Kasyapa was not rigid or conservative. He knew how to be flexible in each specific situation. Meeting new practitioners, he taught gently and gradually. Meeting long-time practitioners who remained lax, he admonished severely. He understood each person had different capacities, requiring different teaching methods, but principles of discipline could not change. They were the boundary between true Dharma and false Dharma, between liberation and samsara. The Buddha's Parinirvāṇa, bearing the great responsibility. When the Buddha reached 80 years, after 45 years of teaching and liberating beings, he decided to enter Parinirvāṇa at Kushinagara. The news spread, causing all disciples immense grief. Venerable Kasyapa was far away. Hearing of the Buddha's passing, he hurried back. On the journey, he met people carrying flowers to attend the funeral. Upon arrival, he prostrated to the Buddha's relics, tears flowing, but he knew this was not the time to be immersed in sorrow, but to shoulder the responsibility the Buddha had entrusted. During the cremation ceremony, Venerable Kasyapa heard a bhikkhu named Upananda say, "That elder has passed away. Now we are free to do as we please, no longer subjected to admonishment." How wonderful! Hearing these words, Venerable Kasyapa was deeply pained. He thought that without quickly compiling the Buddha's teachings, gradually more people like Upananda would appear. The true Dharma would be distorted. Discipline would be violated. He decided to convene a great council to compile the canon. After arranging the distribution of the Buddha's relics, Venerable Kasyapa began preparing for the compilation. He consulted with other elders, deciding to choose Rajagriha as the location because of King Ajatashatru's patronage and adequate facilities and provisions. He decided only arhats could participate, ensuring absolute accuracy in transmitting the Buddha's words. The number was set at 500. Hence this council is called the Council of 500. However, one difficulty arose. Though Venerable Ananda had attended the Buddha for 25 years and remembered all his teachings, at that time he had not yet attained arhatship. Many suggested, including Venerable Ananda, because his role was crucial. Initially, Venerable Kasyapa refused, saying this was a council of those beyond learning. Ananda was still in training and could not attend. But after 2 requests from the Sangha, Venerable Kasyapa consented, on the condition that Venerable Ananda strive to attain realization before the council began. Compiling the canon, imperishable merit for humanity. Hearing Venerable Kasyapa's admonishment, Venerable Ananda understood this was encouragement to practice more diligently. On the final night before the council began, Venerable Ananda strove throughout the night. Near dawn, body and mind exhausted, he thought to rest briefly, right in the posture of leaning to lie down, before touching the pillow. Suddenly, his mind became completely pure. All afflictions severed. He attained arhatship. The next morning, Venerable Ananda used supernormal powers to fly to Saptaparni cave, where the council convened, standing outside the door reciting verses of announcement. Venerable Kasyapa and the arhats all rejoiced, opening the door to welcome him. The compilation council proceeded solemnly. Venerable Kasyapa took the presiding seat. He nominated Venerable Upali to compile the Vinaya, because he was most learned in discipline. He began asking, which precept did the Buddha establish first? Where was it established? Who violated it? What was the offense? Venerable Upali answered in detail and clarity. After each answer, Venerable Kasyapa asked the entire assembly, "Do you all agree?" If everyone agreed, it was confirmed as the Buddha's teaching. This work continued for months. The bhikkhuni precepts were also fully compiled. After completing the Vinaya compilation, Venerable Kasyapa nominated Venerable Ananda to compile the Tripiṭaka. Venerable Ananda ascended the seat, began reciting the teachings he had memorized. Each discourse began with, "Thus have I heard," then clearly stated the time, place, audience, and Dharma talk content. Venerable Ananda's voice was clear, distinct, full of emotion. Hearing him recite, many shed tears, remembering when the Buddha was alive. After each discourse, Venerable Kasyapa again asked the assembly if they agreed. All confirmed it was truly the Buddha's teaching. The compilation lasted 7 months to complete. The 3 Pitakas of Sutra, Vinaya, and Abhidharma were fully compiled. This was an event of immense significance for Buddhism and humanity. Without this compilation, the Buddha's teachings might have been lost or distorted over time. Thanks to the merit of Venerable Kasyapa and 500 Arhats, we today can still read, hear, and practice according to the Buddha's teachings. This is the imperishable merit of Venerable Kasyapa for Buddhism and all sentient beings. Entrusting the Dharma treasury. NE2. Continuing the transmission. After compiling the canon, Venerable Kasyapa continued leading the Sangha, maintaining discipline, guiding disciples in practice. He knew he could not remain forever and must find a worthy successor. That person was none other than Venerable Ananda. Though Ananda attained realization later, he had extraordinary memory. Having memorized all the Buddha's teachings, possessed vast compassion, and was most suitable to lead the Sangha later. When Venerable Kasyapa passed 100 years, his body weakening with time, he knew the moment of Parinirvāṇa approached. He went to where Venerable Ananda was teaching, saying, "Venerable Ananda, soon I will pass away. I entrust the Dharma treasury to you. Guard it well, guide sentient beings in practice, transmit the true Dharma to future generations. Do not let it be severed. You must continue transmitting to your successor, so the lamp of transmission never extinguishes." Hearing this, tears streamed down Venerable Ananda's face, but he understood his responsibility. He prostrated to Venerable Kasyapa, accepting the mission. Before entering Parinirvāṇa, Venerable Kasyapa had one more important task. The Buddha had transmitted to him the golden robe, symbolizing Dharma transmission. He must preserve this robe and the Buddha's bowl until Buddha Maitreya's descent, then return them. This was the Buddha's final instruction before Parinirvāṇa. Venerable Kasyapa decided to enter the deepest meditative absorption, called cessation samadhi, to preserve his body from decay, awaiting countless eons until Maitreya Buddha appears. Venerable Kasyapa journeyed to Kukutapada mountain, a sacred peak about 75 kilometers southeast of Bodh Gaya. The mountain's name came from its shape resembling a hen brooding eggs. Reaching the mountain's base, he used supernormal powers to split the mountain in two, entered within. The 2 massive rock faces closed. He sat in lotus posture within the mountain's heart, wearing the golden robe, holding the Buddha's bowl, entering cessation samadhi. From then until now, spanning 2,500 years, he still sits within Kukutapada mountain, awaiting Maitreya Buddha's descent. Priceless legacy. Lessons for posterity. Venerable Kasyapa's life is a profound lesson about renunciation and diligence. Born into the wealthiest family, able to enjoy every luxury, he chose austerity. He could have married a beautiful wife, had children, but chose pure brahmacharya. He could have lived comfortably in monasteries, but chose mountain caves and forests. Every choice went against worldly currents, but precisely these choices led him to liberation and left priceless heritage for humanity. The first lesson from Venerable Kasyapa concerns determination. From youth, he established the goal of liberation and never wavered despite any difficulty. Parents forced marriage. He found every means to maintain brahmacharya. Living with his wife over 10 years, he maintained purity. After renouncing, he persisted in dutta practice until life's end. This determination is the key to success on the cultivation path. The second lesson concerns compassion. Though Venerable Kasyapa practiced austerity, he was not dry or cold. He possessed profound compassion for sentient beings. He took alms only at poor homes to create merit for them. He patiently taught his former wife to guide her renunciation. He admonished disciples not from hatred, but from love, wanting them to practice correctly. This compassion motivated his tireless work for the Dharma's continuation. The third lesson concerns responsibility. Venerable Kasyapa always clearly understood his responsibility. While the Buddha lived, he exemplified practice. When the Buddha passed, he shouldered canon compilation. Leading the Sangha, he strictly maintained discipline. Before his own passing, he entrusted the Dharma treasury to his successor. At each stage, he completely fulfilled his responsibility. This spirit of responsibility enabled the true Dharma's unbroken transmission. If these lessons from the Great Elder have touched your soul, please subscribe and click the notification bell to continue journeying with us in exploring Buddhist wisdom. Each video is a spiritual gift we wish to share with you. Contemporary relevance. Application to modern life. In today's era, as society increasingly develops, material abundance grows, people have more opportunities to enjoy. Venerable Kasyapa's story may seem distant, but actually, the lessons from him remain extremely practical and necessary for modern life. We need not necessarily abandon all wealth to renounce like him, but we can learn his spirit of non-attachment. Renunciation does not mean abandoning everything, but not clinging to things. In modern life, many indulge in accumulating wealth, chasing fame, drowning in sensual pleasures. They think having much money, high position, enjoying much, is happiness. But reality shows wealthy, powerful people can still be unhappy, still suffer anxiety and insecurity. Why? Because they cling to these things, fear losing them, are never satisfied with what they have. Venerable Kasyapa teaches us, true happiness comes not from outside but within, not from possessing many things but from releasing attachment. Regarding compassion, in modern society, many become selfish, thinking only of personal benefit. They help others only when it benefits themselves. They view the poor as burdens, avoiding them. Venerable Kasyapa teaches us a different perspective. The poor are precisely those needing help most. Helping them creates merit for ourselves. When we help others not for selfish purposes but purely from compassion, we feel happiness and peace within. Regarding responsibility, in modern society, many work without responsibility. They work perfunctorily, carelessly, unconcerned with quality. They think only of salary and promotion, not of work's meaning and value. Venerable Kasyapa teaches us that whatever task entrusted, large or small, must be done wholeheartedly, done best possible. This is responsibility, not only to others, but to ourselves. When we work with responsibility, we develop, mature, and earn everyone's respect. The great being's mind, between solitude and joy. Some wonder, living so austerely, was Venerable Kasyapa happy? Wearing patched robes, eating alms food, sleeping under trees, having nothing to enjoy, what meaning has such life? This question arises from worldly notions that happiness means possessing much, enjoying much. But according to Buddha Dharma, true happiness is inner peace, freedom from bondage, joy from liberation. Venerable Kasyapa lived austerely, but his mind was peaceful. He needed no luxurious home because his mind no longer discriminated noble and humble. He needed no delicious food because he ate to live, not live to eat. He needed no beautiful clothes because he had no mind for showing off. All minimal bodily needs were met, while consciousness remained completely free, unbounded by anything. This is true happiness that worldly people can hardly understand. Moreover, Venerable Kasyapa had great joy from practice and teaching. Daily he sat in meditation, experiencing liberation's Dharma taste, joy beyond compare. Each time he taught others and saw their awakening, he rejoiced immensely. Whenever remembering the Buddha's teachings, seeing himself on the right path, he felt reassured and content. These joys came not from outside but within, not depending on external conditions, so they never disappeared. Comparing with modern life, many have much money, fine homes, beautiful cars, but remain unhappy. They worry about earning more money, fear losing wealth, compete with others, envy the wealthier. Their minds are always insecure, tense, exhausted. Conversely, Venerable Kasyapa had nothing but his mind was peaceful, free, happy. This shows happiness depends not on external conditions but on inner state. Only when we release attachment, know sufficiency with what we have, can our minds truly be at peace. Relics and faith. Kukutapada Mountain and legend. Kukutapada Mountain lies about 75 kilometers southeast of Bodh Gaya, a sacred site in Buddhism. From afar, the protruding rock formations resemble a hen brooding eggs, hence the name Kukutapada, meaning chicken foot mountain. The mountain path is difficult, climbing over large boulders, clinging to tree roots, taking nearly 2 hours to reach the summit. Before reaching the top, one must pass through a narrow rock crevice, barely fitting one person, both sides sheer cliffs. People believe this is the crevice Venerable Kasyapa split with supernormal powers to enter within. At the summit lies a rock hollow, inside a small stupa, enshrining Venerable Kasyapa's image. Each year, thousands of Buddhists from everywhere come here on pilgrimage, prostrating, praying. They believe Venerable Kasyapa still sits in meditation somewhere within this mountain, awaiting Maitreya Buddha's descent. When Maitreya appears, the mountain will automatically open. Venerable Kasyapa will emerge from Samadhi, transmit Shakyamuni Buddha's robe and bowl to Maitreya Buddha, completing his final mission. Though this story sounds mystical, it carries profound symbolic meaning. It shows the true Dharma's immortal spirit. However much time passes, however society changes, the true Dharma remains preserved and transmitted. Venerable Kasyapa symbolizes those preserving the true Dharma. They may not be widely known, not praised, but they quietly work, keeping the Dharma lamp burning. Thanks to such people, Buddha Dharma has reached today and will continue to future generations. In Mahayana Buddhism, Venerable Kasyapa is honored as first Patriarch of Chan Buddhism, first to receive mind seal transmission from the Buddha. From him it transmitted to Venerable Ananda, continuing to Patriarch Bodhidharma, who brought Chan to China. This transmission lineage flows like an inexhaustible river, nourishing countless beings' spirituality. Whenever Chan Buddhism is mentioned, one cannot forget Venerable Kasyapa and the flower sermon. That is the origin, the root of this wondrous Dharma gate. Conclusion. The call from the foremost Dutta saint. Venerable Mahakasyapa's life is a brilliant example of renunciation, diligence, compassion, and responsibility. From a wealthy family's son, he became foremost in Dutta practices, preserver and transmitter of true Dharma to posterity. Thanks to his merit, we today still can read sutras, hear Dharma, practice according to the Buddha's teachings. This is immeasurable grace, boundless merit that no words can fully express. The lessons from Venerable Kasyapa are not only for monastics, but for all of us in daily life. We may not live austerely like him, but we can learn the spirit of releasing attachment. We may not renounce, but we can cultivate pure mind within secular life. We may not compile canons, but we can preserve and spread the true Dharma in our own way. In this current era, when material values are emphasized, when people increasingly lose direction in life, Venerable Kasyapa's story becomes even more meaningful. It reminds us there exists another path, another way of living, another value higher than what eyes see and ears hear. That is the liberation path, the pure lifestyle, spiritual value, transcending all material life's ups and downs. Please take a moment to reflect on your own life. What are we pursuing? What are we living for? Where does our happiness come from? If answers remain unclear, return to Buddha Dharma. Seek guidance from the sages. This is precisely why we built this channel, to share valuable lessons from the Buddha's teachings and sages' lives, helping people find peaceful living and wise conduct in this turbulent era. If what you just read has touched your soul, awakened contemplation about life's meaning, please share this article with your relatives and friends. Subscribe to our channel, enable notifications to not miss upcoming videos. Each subscription, each share, is how you help us continue spreading these beautiful values to more people. It is also how you plant merit fields, create good karma for yourself and everyone around you. Thank you sincerely for taking time to read the entire story of Venerable Mahakasyapa. May you always be peaceful, happy, diligent on the path of cultivation and self-perfection. Homage to fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha.